It wasn't a bad week for predictions last week. We had Charles Rosa by sub. We had Cerrone by decision. We had McGregor by KO. We had Hall by KO. And Houlihan by sub. And if he'd got that sub, I would have been a very wealthy man. But unfortunately, he couldn't pull it off and just won it on points. It cost me a good few of my accumulators. But I'm going to recover all that lost money this week in Sweden, as Gustafsson is going to fight Anthony Johnson. And there's quite an interesting card. These European cards, they usually have a mix of a couple of good fights and then about 6 or 7 almost completely worthless fights that no one wants to see. No one knows who's fighting. But there's some interesting ones this week. I'm going to start with a Russian monster whose name is Konstantin Irokin. And this dude looks like he is pumped full of steroids. He is big and he's got power, and he pretty much knocks everybody out in the first round. Looking at his record here, his last 3 fights, first round knockout. Beat Brett Rogers in Battle of Moscow 15 by decision. Sokaju knocked out in round 1. He had 5 other knockouts in round 1 before them. His first fight was a loss. But since then, he's won every fight by KO apart from 1. And as I said, this guy's huge. He's an animal. And he's fighting a Czech guy called Victor Pesta. And Pesta lost his first fight in the UFC against Ruslan Magomedov, one of the other Russian fighters. I mean, he had some good wins before that, but it's not against any sort of decent competition. And I think this roided up monster from Russia is going to walk through this Pesta guy. So, lock in Konstantin Irokin by knockout. Okay, moving on. We have Neil Two-Tap Siri, another man from Ireland, who made his debut against One Punch Pickett and lost, and put up quite a battle, which Pickett probably wasn't expecting. And he won his next fight against Phil Harris, unanimous decision. He was pretty impressive. And he's fighting Chris Beal. Chris Beal, pretty sure he was on the tough Misha Tate was coaching. I think it's some sort of injury there, but he's a good fighter. He's dexterous, he's got flexibility, he's got interesting punches and moves, and he's 10-0 in his career. So, his last fight he beat Tateki Matsuda by decision. As you remember, Tateki lost the other night by decision as well. Beal's got he's got a few split decisions, he's got some unanimous decisions, he's got a couple of KOs on his record. His first fight in the UFC was a flying knee KO, which is pretty impressive. So, this is a pretty tough fight to call. And I would probably be saying Chris Beal is going to win this because he's going to have a little bit too much action for Siri. Too many things that Siri hasn't seen before, I think, in terms of wild punches and flying knees. And, Siri's a good fighter. He's solid. He comes to fight. He's got good boxing technique. He's tough. But I'm not sure he has the weapons in his arsenal to beat Chris Beal. So I'm taking Chris Beal by decision. Alrighty. We have Akira Corsani, the man with the very cool name and the very poor fighting skills. He's going to be fighting Sam Sicilia. I'm not sure if both of these guys are on the same season of tough, but they're both tough veterans, as they like to call them these days. Corsani, he likes to yap, call out people, looks like a tough guy. As I said, he's a cool name, got some good, interesting looking tattoos. But at the end of the day, when he comes to fight, he usually gets beaten and knocked out, as far as I remember. I mean, he's got a couple of wins in the UFC. He beat Andy Ogle by split decision. Lo and behold, a new title challenger in front of us beats Andy Ogle by split decision. Robbie Peralta, unanimous decision. Maximo Blanco is a DQ. Not sure I remember that fight. But since then, he got knocked out by Poirier and he got knocked out by Holloway in round 1. And I don't see anything that Corsani really brings. If he's against a guy who punches hard, then I can't see him getting through the fight. I see him getting knocked out. I see Sicilian knocking him out in maybe, I don't know, maybe round two. But Sicilia's record, I mean, that's not all. It's no great shakes either. He's got a couple of losses by rear naked choke, but he's got a good few knockouts on his record, and I don't think that Corsani can take a punch, and I think he's going to get knocked out, and then I think he's going to get cut. So, not that I rate Sicilia as a world beater, but he's going to beat this punk Corsani by KO. Not sure what round, but it's going to happen. There's your bet. Back it, people. Back it. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Nicholas Musoki. Nico Musoki. So, he's a Swedish fighter, fighting with his home crowd. He's got a decent record in the UFC, 3-1. His only loss was to Gastelum by decision. He wins a lot of his fights by decision as well. He's got some decent submissions. He submitted Sakara by armbar, but, Sakara isn't a world beater. He's got a few submissions lower down his record, and he's a good experienced fighter, but he doesn't really rock my boat, does Musoki. I haven't seen anything out of him that's go, wow, this guy's got some real talent. He's kind of meh. That's what he is. And the guy's fighting Albert Tumanov, another Russian, getting invaded by the Russians. Sweden is this weekend. Tumanov, this guy likes to knock people out. Let's have a look at his record here. Yeah, I mean, it was knockout, decision, knockout, head kick. He lost a split decision against Ildemar Alcantara. And that was last February. That's a split decision. I think that was in Brazil. So, a Russian going to Brazil, he's not exactly going to get a hometown decision, is he? So, yeah, I'm reckoning, and his last two fights, he knocked out Anthony Lapsley and he knocked out Matt Dwyer with a head kick. So, this guy, Musoki, maybe I'm underestimating him, but I just think Tumanov's going to go in there and he's going to knock him out. Don't ask me why. Well, ask me why. He's a lot of knockouts in his record, so he's probably going to knock him out. Musoki he doesn't do it for me, so I'm going to back Tumanov by KO. Alrighty, now we get to the business end of the card, and we start off with Bader versus Davis. Now, Bader, I have to say, I'm impressed with Bader. Bader is always getting better. He always comes in with a fantastic game plan, and he works the weaknesses of his opponents. He works it very well, and he's improved his striking a lot. And yeah, Davis, not many people like Phil Davis, including myself, but that's not to say I don't respect this guy's skills. And I had him picked to beat Glover Teixeira by decision. I think that was a pretty easy one to pick. A lot of people thought I was crazy and thought he would get knocked out, but after what he did to Lyoto Machida and danced around and in and out, any stand-up fighter that Phil Davis faces is going to have a very hard time beating Phil Davis, because his movement is great, he's in and out, and yeah, he's very, very durable, hard to knock out. Bader's a different type of fighter, but this is a tough fight to call. It really is a tough fight to call, but my money, unfortunately, is going to be on Phil Davis for this fight. Simply because what I think he's going to do is his usual dancing around, in and out with a few jabs, a few kicks. He might throw a couple of takedowns in. Don't think he'll be able to keep Bader down, but the boos are going to ring out in Sweden for Phil Davis. Let's be clear about that. And he's going to take the mic at the end of the fight. He's going to talk some shit, and everyone's not going to really be listening and kind of going to get another beer while Phil Davis is calling someone out and trying to be relevant and exciting. But we know you're boring, Phil. We know you're very boring. Bader, I like. And, Bader's a wrestler too, but Bader, with his ha, likes a punch, and he's going to try and hit Phil Davis. He's going to try and wrestle him. He's going to try and dominate him. He might do it, but it's unlikely. As much as I like Bader, would like to see him push through and win this fight, Davis is going to win it on points. It's unfortunate. He's not going to knock Bader out. He's not going to submit Bader. He just doesn't have those skills. But he can dance. He can be a bitch. And that's what he's going to do. So lock in Phil Davis on points. Then we go to Hendo versus Musashi. An interesting fight. A lot of people would say Hendo is finished. Probably including me. He's a bit old. He doesn't have his juice anymore. So it wasn't a lot of fun watching him get ragdolled by Cormier like a small child. But Hendo, as we know, has the H-bomb. But he's fighting Musashi. Musashi's quite a clever fighter. He's had a couple of losses recently, Musashi. He lost to Jacare and he lost to Machida. Machida fight was pretty close, as far as I remember. He got submitted by Jacare. I think that Musashi is going to keep Hendo at bay with his jab and his kicks. And I think Hendo's going to gradually get slower and slower. The H-bomb will get slower and slower. And eventually in round 3 it'll be going in slow motion. And unless Musashi does something very stupid like a Michael Bisping and decides to circle straight into a H-bomb, I don't think Hendo's winning this fight. And he probably should have retired after his loss against Cormier, but Hendo wants to go out with a knockout. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying he likes to fight, he'll compete, blah, blah. I know, looking at Hendo, he wants to go out on a high, and he doesn't want to go out with that embarrassment against Cormier. So, go out there, Hendo, put on a good show, but my money's going on Musashi to win this by decision. Okay, in the main event of the evening, Gustafsson versus Anthony Johnson. Now, I have my suspicions about Anthony Johnson and what kind of diet he's on, but we'll say nothing more about that. The man has got power, and he is capable of knocking anybody out. Probably any man that walks the earth could be knocked out by Anthony Rumble Johnson. Gustafsson, I kind of agree with him. He thinks his style is just the anti-Johnson style. The in and out, the poke, 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 the kick, kick, kick. Johnson won't know what's happening to him. It'll be like 10 wasps all stinging him at the same time when he fights Gustafsson. And it's 5 rounds. The thing about Johnson is he's got so good in the last year or two. He really does look almost invincible. And he did beat Phil Davis, who was a kind of like a wasp as well, except an older, or except a slower, more benign wasp than Gustafsson is. And it's a very tough fight to call, but I think Gustafsson's going to win this by decision. I think he's just going to hammer Johnson constantly with small, light punches and kicks. And eventually, by the 3rd or 4th round, Johnson's going to really slow down, and it's going to be over within 3 rounds. It'll go to a decision, but Johnson won't have any fight left after Gustafsson's hit him 100 times in the face. So that's my prediction. Gustafsson to win by decision. Now, I will probably have a little side bet for a Johnson KO just to cover my ass, but yeah, I think Gustafsson, he's been training a long time for this. I know he's been analysing. I think he knows exactly how to fight Anthony Johnson. And I don't know if he's capable of finishing Rumble, but he will get a points decision. His hand will be raised in Sweden, and then the rematch with Senior Jones, our Pepsi drinking friend, will be declared by Senior White. And I think that'll be a pretty good rematch, pretty big rematch. But that's my picks for this weekend's fights in Sweden. I'm Don Rival. Another winning weekend ahead for all the people listening to me and my predictions. Best of luck, people. Get some accumulators on. Use Odds Checker. You know, sometimes it's a pain in the ass signing up to all these different bookmakers to get better odds, but at the end of the day, a lot of the main bookmakers' odds are getting tighter. Paddy Power, I've noticed, odds are getting tighter by the week. So I'm moving on to some other bookmakers, Ladbrokes, Victor Chandler, and Boyle Sports to get whatever odds I want. But you can see the best ones on oddschecker.com. That's the place to start for your accumulator. Takes a little bit of time, but time is money. The more time you put in, the more money you'll make. I will talk to you next time. Good luck.